to be able to be here with you tonight to do a presentation on our team's analysis of GE's submittals around the Upland disposal facility design. But before we get into those details, I just want to take a moment to let you know some of the details about kind of how we got here and who our team is. And so, first, just some kind of background on overall sort of how did the town of Lenox get to this point kind of at a large scale. And so, some background about that is that GE had a company in Pittsfield that released PCBs from 1932 through 1977. And so, kind of since that time, they negotiated with the communities along the Housatonic about cleanup of the PCBs from the river. The EPA determined that the PCBs in the river pose a risk to human health and the environment. Cleanup in Pittsfield, the first 2 miles from the plant were covered in a consent decree settlement signed in 2000. And that meant that the rest of the communities further down the Housatonic, Great Barrington, Lee, Lenox, Sheffield, and Stockbridge negotiated as part of the Rest of the River Committee, which began in 2013. And so that committee of those towns participated in mediation with the EPA and GE to negotiate the terms of the cleanup permit for the rest of the river down from Pittsfield. And then though there was an initial permit in 2016, a corrective action permit, that said that GE was going to ship all waste from the river out of state, GE appealed that permit, and they appealed it successfully to the EPA's Environmental Appeals Board in 2018. And that appeals board ordered the committee to consider a landfill in Berkshire County. And though the towns could have continued to pursue disposing of waste out of state, GE could have continued to appeal that all the way to the Supreme Court, and would have required ongoing appropriations for the towns to keep pursuing that approach. And so because of that and a number of other reasons, the rest of the River Committee signed a settlement agreement in 2020 that agreed to the disposal of certain less contaminated soils in an Upland disposal facility. That's a UDF, if you hear us mention the words UDF and Lee, as well as out-of-state disposal for the most contaminated soils that come out of the river. And so at this point in the process, with that settlement agreement signed, and about that settlement agreement kind of detailed what cleanup will entail, GE at this point in the process is submitting plans and designs for each part of the cleanup for the EPA's review and approval and for the public to provide comments on. And so something to know about the Upland disposal facility that the rest of the River Committee negotiated is that this will be a subtitle C landfill, which has a higher standard and is a bit more comprehensive for the disposal of the types of sediments coming out of the river, which are lower concentration PCB impacted sediment that is typically required. And so that's kind of the product background. Our contract, so I come from Weston Sampson, our contract with the town is to review the plans and designs that GE is submitting and to do a technical review of those plans. Reviewing them to look out for any deficiencies as well as the safety of the design, methodologies proposed, and impacts on the community. And we understand some of the concerns of the community, like impacts on groundwater. And so our technical analysis is meant to inform the town's comments to the EPA, as well as to help the public make effective public comments. And so the EPA is accepting public comments. The next deadlines are on May 20th and May 17th. And so there's a board in the back with a QR code that can link you to the EPA's website, and it also has the appropriate email addresses for you to submit public comments. And so the comments that Weston Sampson has posted are on the library's website. So the town of Lenox's library has a great resource page explaining the project background. And the reports that our team has prepared are linked there, as well as relevant links from the EPA. And so at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Brian, who will be able to talk a little bit more about the Upland disposal facility design and our team's analysis. I'm sorry, I didn't go through the slides, but if you go to the next one, there's some headshots of our team.
Well,
oh, you're already there. Yeah. Great.
Okay, hi everyone. So, as Linda mentioned, we are right now looking at the Upland disposal facility. This is the latest design
document that has been submitted by GE and their consultant, Arcadis. The UDF is essentially a new landfill that is going to receive the vast majority of the sediments removed as part of the West River project. The landfill is being designed in accordance with the EPA category for hazardous waste landfill, which is known as a RECRA subtitle C landfill. So a lot of the details that are in this report reflect the criteria and specifications that EPA have established for design and operation of landfill of that type. So our review at the moment is looking at the design vis-a-vis those EPA guidelines and requirements, and also in comparison to what we know from current best practices for design of these facilities. So we'll get to that a little bit. So, you guys might have seen some of these images on the town website. On the left-hand side, you can see the site for the UDF. It's located at a portion of the main construction company facility just over the border in Lee. You can see the limits of sediment disposal. That's basically the footprint for the UDF. At the site, we also have some power lines running through the site on the west side. So that does limit the footprint that's available. They also have areas for management of stormwater, operational areas that they'll need for equipment and materials during construction, and they have laid out some of these items in the plans that we've received. The site will also have facilities for collection and storage of leachate. That's the water that infiltrates or leaches out of the sediment that's deposited in the landfill. So we have a system in place to collect that and pump that and store that for us to export. I also included some images here of the main property as we see it today. You can see what's left from historic quarrying operations there. A pretty scarred landscape. Not much vegetation, not exposed sand and gravel and soil that's residual from the quarry. On the right hand side, you can see the equivalent future rendering of what this UDF will look like. Just a big picture. You can see the green vegetated mound at the center of the site. You can see the line work that represents the access road for the landfill so that it can be maintained, it can be mowed, inspected and so on. So I'm just going to give you guys sort of that perspective before we get into the details here. So the UDF itself, these drawings are from the design documents that we've received most recently from GE. On the left-hand side, you can see an engineering plan view of the UDF. It consists of, first and foremost, a perimeter berm. So what they're creating here is essentially a bowl. Right? They're excavating out material at the center, and they're using that material to build a berm, perimeter berm all around. So you have what essentially looks like in a football bowl. Pasadena Rose Bowl would be a good way of thinking of it. So that's what's being constructed initially for the landfill in preparation for receipt of the sediment. Now that berm on the base of the landfill will be constructed with a liner. So this is one of the main requirements of the EPA rules on subtitle C landfills. The liner in this case is the protective or the impermeable barrier that prevents leachate or sediment from leaving the landfill and re-entering the environment, whether it's in the soil below or further down to the groundwater. That liner system, under these rules, is the most protective type of landfill. It's called a double liner system. There's two distinct layers: primary liner as the initial protective layer, and then a secondary liner underneath that as a double protection. And what that allows the operation to do is, what it allows us to do is assess the effectiveness of that primary liner in preventing infiltrating leachate from going through that liner. There's a leak detection system in between the two. And it consists of a pump, a series of pumps with flow switches that will detect anything that passes through the first line and down to the second line. So that's the essence of the extra protection here. We have that ability to assess the function and the operation of the primary line. The landfill will be, sorry, not just for that. The landfill, engineering drawings, please. Just a couple of other things. There's the landfill is broken up into two waste cells. This gives GE some ability to, organize their filling operations a little more consistently, so that they can fill one side to a certain point, add a temporary cap to that so it's covered, and then work on filling the second cell and kind of flip back and forth between the two. So it's typical to see this in landfills that have a number of cells available for filling. What else do we have here? On the top, we see what's called a section view. So this is a slice through the landfill. And the main thing that this is showing is the separation between the deposited sediment material and the groundwater at the site. Under the permit that EPA established for this, the minimum separation to groundwater is 15 feet. And this site is anyway suitable because groundwater elevation is quite deep, to the point that a separation of about 17 feet is being achieved with the location of this landfill. So I just wanted to show that on the top left. On the right-hand side, I mentioned the leachate collection system. This essentially is, like I said, a series of pumps that are positioned at the lowest points of each of these cells and infiltrating, leachate that's passing through the sediment down to the bottom landfill, hitting this first primary liner, is collected in a series of pipes and drainage fabric and channeled to these sumps. And within those sumps are, like I said, pumps that activate on the switch system and pump the leachate up out of the cells, up to the top of the burn, into a main header pipe force main that takes the leachate to a system of storage tanks. You can see here on the right-hand side. And from there, it's stored until trucking comes, takes that leachate to another facility that is licensed and permitted to handle the leachate and remove any possible PCBs that are in the leachate, dissolve in the leachate. So that's the system we have for leachate collection. Again, that's typical for landfills of this type. A number of them that have these leachate collection systems. So again, that's part of our review of these documents, is to look at the performance and the feasibility of the systems. This graphic here, I want to kind of show a little bit more detail. First of all, at the bottom of the floor-based liner system, you can see, it's a little bit hard to see, you can see the different materials they use for the primary and the secondary liner. Primary liner is a material known as high-density polyethylene flexible membrane liner. It's a very thick plastic. Now, could you grab that sample over there? It's essentially the same type of plastic you use for, on top of that, but much thicker, much stiffer, and has, it's highly impermeable. So we're going to do that. That's an example we have from the Turnkey landfill up in New Hampshire, largest municipal landfill in New England. We have many facility engineers in that project. So that's from an actual landfill capping project that we're involved in there, so you can see the material that's used. What goes along with that material is another layer, and here it's identified as the geocompetitive clay liner. And it's a material that's actually invented on clay, and it's placed between two blankets, two sheets of material that hold the clay in place. And once that clay is wet out, it swells, and swells to such an extent that it creates, again, a very impermeable layer. So there it's there.
Section of the GCL.
I'm going to pass around to folks if they want to take a look, but you can see that the bentonite clay in the middle, fabric at the bottom, and fabric at the top. So again, our primary liner is those two materials in conjunction with each other. The secondary liner is the same thing all over again. Okay, those two materials make up the secondary liner. As an addition to the secondary liner, the plans call for installation of a 1 foot thick layer of clay. Clay is the traditional material used for lining sites like these back 30, 40 years ago, before these materials were invented, essentially. So clay works very well. It's highly impermeable, but it's difficult to construct. It's difficult to install and meet the requirements for its placement, its compaction, so that it doesn't crack, it doesn't open up, it performs well as a material. So construction of these materials, how it's constructed and the quality control that goes into these materials is very important. It's very important for clay and for these materials as well. We've looked at the primary liner, the secondary liner. In between, I mentioned the leak protection system. It consists of a granular drainage layer, so that's going to be a thickness of sand, essentially, that allows any leachate to pass through the primary liner to quickly make its way down to the secondary liner, where it can be detected. And that also includes another material. This is another drainage material that helps to, again, move the leachate over to the pumps. It's a three-dimensional plastic material, so it's a grid of plastic that has a matrix of flow channels within it that, again, as soon as the leachate hits that, it can quickly travel through the geomet to the summit where the pumps are. And then above all of those liners, the primary liner, secondary liner, we place our river dry sediment. So that sediment is essentially solid. Part of the process here is to dewater the sediments, remove all of the river water that's held within the pores of the sediments, and establish it as a material that can be replaced with a machine, it can be compacted, can be built up in layers and lifts within the main body of the Okay? And then the last system is the final cover system of the cap. So once all the sediment is in place, we want to make sure we prevent any rainwater getting into the sediment, because rainwater will generate more leachate, which really has to continue to be directed and so on and so forth. So the cap, this cover system is very important once everything is in place. The cover system is pretty much a repeat of the liner systems. It's flexible membrane liner, the neck held up there. It's the geosynthetic clay liner in conjunction with it. It also has a drainage fabric. Talk about that again. The final layer is 12 inches, 80 inches of topsoil material to allow growth of grass, essentially. The establishment of a strong turf on top of these landfills is very important. We want to avoid erosion, we want to avoid washouts, we want to avoid exposure of these cap materials to the open air, to sunlight, because while they perform very well when they're buried, they don't perform well when they're exposed to sunlight. They tend to break down the structure of the material. You have to make sure you keep these materials covered at all times. So that's essentially the design of the UDF and its layers. Not going to go on to this. This slide here, I think again, is available on the town website. It represents some renderings for how the UDF will look from certain vantage points around town. On the left-hand side, we have views from Bristol Street. It's kind of hard to see, but through the trees at the bottom, you can see they've rendered in what this UDF is going to look like from that perspective. You can see a very thin green line through the trees and the red box at the bottom. That's what you'll see at that time of year from that location. The right-hand side is a little more obvious. This is from East Street. You can see again the red box pointing out where the UDF will be. You can see at the bottom below of the box, you can see the green outline of the UDF superimposed against the darker outline of the relief panel. Just to go through some of the protections that we're reviewing here as part of the UDF design. So, first of all, the dredge materials, like I mentioned, they cannot contain free liquid. They need to be placed in the landfill in a dry condition, free of liquid, essentially. I'll get into this in a minute, but this one does bring up one of the main comments we have so far on this document. The GE have mentioned the use of hydraulic dredging to remove some sediments from the river. That's essentially removal of sediments in a slurry form, right, in almost fully liquid form, pumping it through the dredge head into a pipe, sending it all the way down to the storage facility. That material is, like I said, a flowing liquid. Somehow it has to be transformed into a solid that can be placed in the landfill. We need to see more detail from GE as to how they plan to do that. It may be something that has to take place next to the UDF. If that's the case, it's going to need to be a big area with a volume segment. Do we have an area on site that can be used for that? Is there space available? All questions that we need answers on. They have alluded to actually using the cells as a space for dewatering the slurry. How that all happens, we haven't seen any details. But we need to see more. We'll definitely answer questions on that. So. Number two, stormwater. Obviously, while the cell is in operation, while it's being filled, it's going to receive a certain amount of precipitation. That precipitation, once it's in contact with the sediment, it's considered leachate. That has to be collected, that has to be put in the tanks, like I showed you guys, and taken for disposal. It would be optimal to minimize the amount of rain that falls in context of the sediment. We would like to see some more details on that. So that's one thing we've commented on here. What else do we have? I think we've covered that at this point. It looks like this. Are there long-term monitoring requirements? Yes, there are. GE is responsible for the long-term maintenance and monitoring of the facility, and will bear all costs for doing that. Post-closure monitoring. So this is after the sediment has been placed in UDF and it's been capped. Part of the monitoring of this facility is sampling of groundwater around the perimeter of the landfill to make sure that there are no contaminants essentially inherent in the UDF and impacting groundwater. That monitoring is called post-closure monitoring. That has to happen in perpetuity of this project. Does this solution provide long-term effectiveness? Yes, in the sense that the PCB impacted sediments, which are essentially non-controlled release to the environment, will be removed in a permanent fashion from the river, from the wetlands, and contained within the UDF. By doing so, I think we'll get our river back, right? It's now available to the community as an asset, recreation, fishing, clothing, and so on. I put a bullet list here of just some of the comments that we have so far. I guess you could say we have them in two buckets. We have very specific technical comments for repairing their design to the EPA requirements, and again to what we see as best practice in the industry. Are there significant comments? Well, put it this way, they can be easily addressed. I think they're perfectly acceptable comments that should be incorporated into any revisions to the design here. The second bucket is more the bigger picture, and I alluded to this with how the hydraulic dredge material should be managed. I don't think we want a situation where in a future report we find out that hydraulic dredging isn't considered feasible because that's why we move and move at the UDF site. So we want to make sure they think of that now, they account for that now, and they give us more detail at this point so that we can ascertain whether this is viable or not. Because I think it would be a benefit to the town to avoid trucking as much as possible. So, next steps, I think. Can you go back 2 minutes? Anyone want this?
So in terms of next steps, so GE and their contractors are going to continue preparing plans and designs to submit to the EPA. The EPA will receive those comments from local communities, including Lenox, compiles those public comments with their own and sends those comments to GE to address. Weston Sampson will continue to support the town with reviewing these documents with technical review and comments. And GE and their contractors will have to revise their designs based on the EPA's comments. So at the bottom, you can kind of see the cyclical nature of how this comment relationship with the EPA and GE works. If you go to the next slide, Marco. And so the last slide is about what can residents do at this point in time. And so the EPA is accepting public comments at R1 Housatonic at EPA.gov. And so you can see some of the comment periods have passed, but the comment periods for the revised UDF final pre-design investigation summary report, the final design plan, the operations monitoring and maintenance plan, those are all May 20th deadline. And the Woods Pond Dam Phase 1 inspection/evaluation report, that's due in 2 days on the 17th. And so we have a board with details and sort of tips for how to craft an effective comment to the EPA. We have them here. But so keeping them focused on the topic at hand is very helpful for them to kind of focus in. Using specific examples to illustrate your concerns, defining clearly your objectives, using headings or bullets can be helpful. Being respectful and being clear and concise can all make it helpful for them reviewing hundreds of comments to really process and understand the importance of your comments. And so if you scan these QR codes with your phone, You can go to the EPA's webpage on the Housatonic Western River Remediation Project. But also, the town of Lenox's public library webpage has everything compiled kind of in a good way from the Lenox perspective of, the project background as well as links to documents from the EPA. And materials will continue to be posted on the library's website, so that's a good place to have in your bookmark as a place to go back to as this project kind of moves forward. And the next slide, Marco. Yeah, so that's all we have for the presentation, and I think we can probably take any questions if folks have it.
Hi, Susan Wolf, I live in Lenoxdale. I'm wondering if it's helpful if there were a lot of comments. So Weston Sampson has made a comment, the select board of the town has made a comment. Does it also help if hundreds of residents make the same comment over? Does that persuade EPA?
Yes. The I talked to a bunch of people about the T&D plan. GE floated out a plan and said, we're going to do all trucks. All the town residents came out and said, no. We don't want it for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. The town, when we were preparing our response to comments, the town said, we want you guys to come up with a reasonable alternative that limits the amount of trucks. So we worked very hard, talked to a bunch of experts, and came up with that document. EPA is still distilling down all the comments they received. When EPA provides those to EPA, we hope you can post it up, so that we can provide kind of an interim. And then GE, and just in talking to people who run landfills, GE is really trying to figure out what they can do. So, yes, comment. If you want the project to happen, if you want it to change, that's, your voice is taken into account. Will it affect change? But you are taken into account.
So a follow-up to that question is, for those of us who maybe don't feel confident enough to, or with our technical awareness of the project, is it possible for Weston and Sampson to create some sort of boiled down version of the comments that you're providing that then town residents can utilize as template language to present to the EPA? So that our comments are aligned and are in line with Weston and Sampson's comments.
I wouldn't say that you have to be in line. You can absolutely disagree with our comments.
Well, you're experts.
But you can have your own opinion. You absolutely should have your own opinion. Don't take our word for gospel. We have on the town Lenox Library website a frequently asked question document, and we've taken questions, and if you have questions, post them up on that board, because that's our way. We're going to take them, and we're going to add them to the fact document, which just gets longer and longer. We try to put it in sections so that you can search it real quick and get what you want. But that's where we, you're not expected to know what a free groundwater table is, but you can express your concerns about groundwater. We have our experts who get really detailed, but you can ask your questions, and we can incorporate them into the comment documents, and you can submit your own comments, and that gets incorporated. But the fact documents on the webpage are designed to try to be helpful for the community members. And if you have questions about language, why do they call it a reach? Why do they call it the Upland disposal facility? We can help you with the language too. So, take a sticky and a pen and put the question up on there, and we'll keep expanding that fact document.
how many of these landfills that are designed like this are in existence, and how effective have they been?
How many sometimes
Yeah,
that's our
sure.
landfill expert.
From the last time I looked, the list had about 20 or so facilities around the country that are subsidized landfills. The nearest ones to here would be Rochester, New York, within the New York area.
Love
No,
Canal is not
no.
sometimes, So the Love Canal is how not to do it.
Don't bring that out. There's also a facility out in central Indiana. In fact, a lot of hazardous waste materials generated in this region are sent out there, trucked or sent out there. That's really closest to this region at the moment. Second question, how effective have they been? I actually have a document I can refer you to. The EPA did look at this about 5-6 years ago. They took a look at their existing list of landfills and took a look at how the liner systems were performing. And generally, at this point, say the first landfills were built mid-80s, early 90s, so probably 30 plus, 35 years into life of these things. So I think at that juncture, 5 years ago, their conclusion, if you want to call it that, was that it was performing as designed, that they weren't seeing, leakage rates into the secondary system that were anyway significant. They were surmising that the materials were performing, to this point as designed. So, I guess it begs the question, okay, it's lasted these first few decades, what do the next decades bring? We don't know. I think EPA are very much interested in tracking that, so we really see more of those reports. But it's something they are very interested in because it is sort of best available technology at the moment for deposition of these materials. And EPA have all of the, like I said, guidelines and rules around it, so they see it as the way to go at this time. So they're very interested in tracking its performance for sure.
And it is EPA's recommended disposal for PFAS. We're going to go the PFAS, the latest forever chemical. They recommend sometimes doing landfills for that. It's their current favorite technology.
Good evening. Bob Porter, Road from Lenox. Question about the process of monitoring release PCBs and ongoing monitoring long-term of the landfill. What is your understanding as to who is going to do it, how frequently is it going to be done? And then, is there a mitigation process that has been proposed by the GE engineers if something is outside what is considered to be the range of normalcy or the range of typical levels of PCBs? My understanding is that the PCB particles that are less than 3 microns in diameter can enter the lungs. And so how much are we going to be monitoring that? Who is going to be doing the monitoring? And how frequently are we going to be doing the monitoring? Particularly during this whole 10-year process.
During construction, EPA or GE has in their O&M plan, and we've commented on the monitoring. They're going to they do about 10 micron. Yes, it's respirable particles. And they're going to be monitoring for that. We have comments on their on the monitoring, but also action levels that they're going to establish. That can be done continuously during construction, and we have comments on how they're going to report that data and make it public, and if they exceed an action level, how are they going to notify? So that's still in, this is where it gets very complicated. The quality of life plan discusses how they're going to report ambient air results, but the O&M plan just, talks about the ambient air monitoring plan and the quality of life plan. So it's all not contained. So I was talking to somebody earlier, on my desktop I have a folder which is like a stack of reports like this, but I can, if it references this, I can click on it, but it's very complex and we're trying to distill these things out. None of these are final yet, they're all being commented on, so, if you have some concerns, get it, I live across, if you're in Lenox, I live across from where this construction is going to go on. I want to know when there's exceedances. So the ambient air monitoring will go on. They can do that real time. You can't do real time monitoring for PCBs in air because you have to collect the sample, prep the sample, analyze it, report it. So that takes a few days. So they're going to do some PCB monitoring to see how it tracks with their dust data that can be done real time. And then there's going to be some decisions made as to whether or not they need to do more, or if they can use dust as a surrogate to be protective of the community. But those are working through. And like I said, we've provided comments. Others have provided comments. Feel free to make your own comments because that's how these things get worked out. But it is a little problematic when they have this piece of information in that document, and that piece of information in that document, and that piece of information, and I might make my own comment. Could they just make sure that they append these things electronically? If they're being distributed electronically, they're not killing any additional trees. If it's referenced, it should be attached. Because that's very difficult. I have a system I've worked out when I'm reviewing these, but for everybody, but I'm doing this professionally, so they should include them. I think that's the comment.
So it sounds like the obfuscation is the opposite word of it. But so did you run across what the mitigation plan would be if the levels were what's elevated? And is there a moratorium on further dredging, further transport? Did they give a definite plan? Is there a week where you wouldn't do anything if you had levels that
they have, for air, PCBs can volatilize, but their primary mechanism of travel will be dust. That's why they're going to do the dual monitoring, just to check that out. For dust, that's pretty easy to deal with. You spray some water. You don't put a lot of water, just put some water on. And that you can deal with the dust in real time. No, there's not, what if we are chronically exceeding our standards? No, there's nothing in there, but landfill construction is at a point where they have developed some good practices to
implement them?
And that's where the oversight comes in. EPA has oversight. The towns receive money to do some oversight. If this data is being reported real time, if there's something here, if these monitors broadcast and you picked up by a computer, there's no reason why somebody here at the town of Lenox or town of Lee could be looking at, but GE's not going to want to make it public, but they can be pushed that way. These things are all be working out, but please submit your comment. I want to know daily the dust concentrations, because I live just over on the other side of the road.
I've got a follow-up question on the comment process and your recommendations. So there's been earlier comment periods, and probably many of the submitted comments back in January, rail versus truck and that sort of thing. Do we need to resubmit the same comments every 3 months, or do they keep them? Does it become part of the corpus of the input? What do we do?
Well, that's why, GE still distilling these comments and they'll provide them to, EPA still distilling comments and they'll provide them to GE. That's why I want to get that document, and we've asked EPA to make sure that they provide so that we can post it. So that, you'll see, EPA will distill everything and hit what they believe. But the comment document, we got it, the Upland Disposal Facility pre-design investigation summary report that came out as draft. We looked at the comment document and just posted, because that report came out again. We looked at the comments we made, the comments that EPA made, aligned them. A lot of our comments were included in the EPA comments, and then we looked at what they addressed. We saw that the hydrogeology, they really did a good job of doing it. The comments we made on landfill design, they picked it up in the design report, the initial design report for the UDF. We're a little disappointed that they didn't address some of the geotechnical issues that we addressed, so we, we'll continue to, our comment document on the revised UDF PDI says we still believe that there's some geotechnical issues that need to be resolved. At what point that happens in the process, so yes, you put in your comments, and if it goes to EPA, it ends up in the big document with all the comments, and then, EPA distills them down and kind of look at, what EPA is seeing as most important and filtering through as their comments, but they are going to GE. Whether or not GE, what they do with it, that's still ongoing, but, so the document comes out, and it's just the way the nomenclature, they call it the final design plan. Well, that's, the design plan is the first time it's come out to the public and it gets commented on, and then they'll come out with the revised plan. And if enough comments come in on the revised plan, they'll have to do a revision of the revision. So, it is an iterative process, like it showed on the slide, that there's comments going back and forth.
So it sounds like we have to watch for every revision, and if they haven't incorporated the comments we made before, we have to make them again. Otherwise, they'll assume that we don't care anymore.
Yeah. Keep putting your hand up, and your comment may never be addressed, but
it seems like this is something that maybe you guys can help with. So the big issue, like the transportation thing, right? Pretty much everybody cares about that, right?
Everybody hated the transportation plan that came out. And so that's why I want to get a hold of the comments when they go from EPA to GE so that we can post it up and people can look at it and see what is being incorporated and being changed and how this is working.
Just two questions. First one, so my understanding is that GE is going to be responsible for monitoring. Now, does EPA monitor GE, and then the town should also hire somebody to monitor EPA and GE? Or how does that work? The second question is similar to what Bob was asking. In terms of like 5 years down the road or so, if there's a failure, does GE submit a plan of how they're going to remediate something like that?
So all the monitoring that's going to go on, GE will hire a contractor to do the monitoring. And I was talking to somebody, well, how can we trust these contractors? We all do this type of work. If we submit false information, our licenses are at risk. Sometimes jail time is at risk. I'm working in a site where someone previously did some stuff wrong. They're in court right now. They may go to jail. Some of the people are going to jail. So,
Reputation and our future business
yeah,
interests
So-
are affected as well.
we do not benefit, so that I don't want to disparage, contractors who work for GE, they just work for GE, but they have their own reputations and the future of the company to worry about. Then there are reports that go to EPA, and there has to be enough backup information provided. If you do analytical, you have to submit not just a table, but you have to submit the analytical data report so that EPA can dig into it and look at it, and they will dig into it and look at it. I have personally tested that. I'm sure you could attest to that too. So there are multiple layers, and nobody has the incentive to cheat on the side of GE. I actually take a little umbrage. Can we trust that contractor? Yes, my personal reputation. It's my company's reputation. Companies have gone under for such subterfuge. So I'm on the witness list against this other person who did things wrong. So I know personally what can happen to these contractors. So, this report, and then these reports are going to be posted. And you can look at them as well and see what's going on. And so in the town, like I said, the towns receive money to continue to review these things. So, so maybe the town, it may not be Weston Sampson at that time. That's 13, 15 years down the line. They may have found somebody else that they look better by then. But anyway, the towns can have these reviewed as well and get comment documents that can be still be posted. So there's multiple layers of, not one person is responsible for running this all over the There's multiple people, and everybody has their own interests at heart. And so, but getting the product that needs to be generated, and the EPA is something that they don't want to just reject and say, go back and do this again. So.
Essentially, although GE is paying for the information is considered public.
Absolutely.
What's the question?
Is the information considered public? Anything that goes to EPA, and GE will have to report the monitoring results to EPA. That is a public document. That is out there and available to everyone. And if they don't post it, you can FOIA request that stuff.
So, based on your, maybe not 100%, so, an outside company, you mentioned GE will post the information, if I'm mistaken. But if an outside, GE hires an outside firm, they do the monitoring, that data goes to GE and EPA?
Any monitoring that is required under the EPA order and the O&M and plans have to be approved by EPA. All the information that they're supposed to gather, GE is responsible to report it to EPA so that EPA can look at it. And anything that goes to the government is public information, so that should be made available to everyone.
The leachate, the leachate containment system, given that there is the details of the dewatering of the dredging isn't really there yet, do you feel that the leachate containment system is substantial enough to contain all the potential leachate, and if it isn't, then where does it go, or what happens to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's kind of the root of our question is how, just from an operations point of view, from a logistical point of view, how do they intend to perform dewatering, large volumes of sediment that could be, around volumes of leaching, of water. Yeah, where that happens on site, how it happens on site, how it's managed, the infrastructure that they plan to put in place, is it adequate for the intended volume, is there adequate storage for the leaching once it's collected, is there adequate footprint to perform the dewatering, whether it's using mechanical equipment like presses or centrifuges, or using geotubes, which are like big wheels that allow the water to flow out of the tube and leave the dried sediment behind. That takes up a big footprint, that takes up a lot of area depending on the volume. So, yeah, I think TBD in our mind, we need to definitely see more on that. When you're bringing hydraulic and dredge sediment, obviously that vastly increases the volume of leachate that you need to be able to manage. So that, like I said, can impact the overall facility operations, and we want to see how that's going to work.
What is the moisture content level of what's going in the facility after it's dewatered?
The compaction is 90%. It would be 15-20%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's between 5 and 15.
5 to 15.
Yeah, there's not
that low.
Well, it'll be gravity drained, and then it'll be treated with Portland cement or some other similar, we call it hygroscopic, something that sucks up water. It can't be any free water in there. Now, if you were to take a shovel and dig a foot down and pull that up, that soil is going to be, it could look very dry. That's going to be 5 to 15%.
Oh yeah. Well, I've worked in a paper mill, so
yeah.
Moisture content of paper is incredibly variable. So
yeah, but it's going to be. There can be no free liquid when it's.
Yeah, but it's still a question of you're putting moisture in there.
Yeah,
that's going to flow down, and it's going to be collected, and then it's got to be moved up. So that's a known quantity of water that's going to be in there.
Yeah.
And it seems like this is not a mystery. It's like you know how much water is going in. If you know how much fill's going in, you know how much water is going in. You know what the requirements are for the collection system. So what is that?
Yeah, I mean that's one thing. Like you're dealing with sediment that's already entering the landfill in a dry condition. It doesn't have free water. It's going to continue to release leachate, from the pressure of the material being deposited on top. Gravity drainage is getting pushed out of the pore spaces between the sediment, working its way down through the sediment down to the bottom. That's going to have a kind of a curve that looks like that. There's going to be a high rate of leachate for the initial period of time, and then it's going to gradually tail off as the landfill is completely filled and so on. So that's one consideration. If you add on top of that a slurry of material that they're suggesting could be dewatered within the disposal cell, well, that adds a whole new magnitude of volume to deal with. We just haven't seen any details on how that all works or how that happens. So,
how many of these facilities exist now?
So that was, about 20.
Yeah, you said it was in the 20, let's say 25.
Yeah.
And when was the first one built?
About the mid-80s.
So it's got 40 years of history.
Yeah.
So this is like building a car. People know how to do this.
Yeah.
This is not experimental.
Not at all. So that information should be readily available, or be able to be summarized and provided in some report. Now, not all of those 20 facilities are going to be receive sediment from the cleanup project, right? They're receiving materials all over the country.
All I'm saying is what the finished product looks like is a known entity.
Yeah.
How tall is this thing? Sorry, that's my last question.
Precipitation too.
Well, yeah, you don't have to specification, right?
But how tall is this thing gonna be, and what's the diameter?
The top elevation is 1099, okay, so it's pretty much the height of the power lines that are through there. The base elevation, could you check the drawings on the base elevation?
And we'll take 2 more questions and we are past our time, but we'll get these 2 more, and then if you have additional questions, please put them on board, and we're going to be tackling you guys.
So 980 is the base elevation for the cells. So, and then the top elevation of the landfill is about 11. So about 120 feet of material above the top.
So it seems to me, that between parking all the way to the process, and it seems to be an awful lot of unknowns. So people who are designing, and they want to be doing school time, have previous examples to go on, for 40 years, and we don't know what the mitigation plans are, if it's going to go wrong. We don't know what their monitoring actually is. How quickly the reports are going to come out. How could they be so ill-defined this late on? I get the transportation part, the really, if you were a company and this was a big project, you would be much further on. So do you have information of this is a design service, we don't know? Or are they just
You made a good point, Malcolm, about that's a big driver here. The legal requirements to submit reports at certain deadlines, or the permit.
EPA gave them a schedule. Thou shalt generate this report by this date. And it is a highly complex procedure. So there are engineers who absolutely pulling their hair out, and they have to leave some loose ends because thou shalt meet this date. So, but okay, they get what's called the final design plan out, and then there's comment and revisions, and but that timeline can be extended. Like the transportation and disposal revised T&D plan will come out probably extended because there's so many variables that they're dealing with. These reports aren't easy to generate. There's so many things going on, and they are getting there. I mean, the UDF PPI, the Upland Disposal Facility Pre-Design Investigation Report, we had some real issues with the hydrogeology. That all got cleaned up. So there's a reason why the process is iterative. It's a very difficult job. So I don't want to throw a lot of dirt at the engineers at Arcadis or AECOM or Anchor QEA. They are doing, I think they're doing a pretty good job. It's tough to do these reports, so I don't want to throw.
But the breaking ground on the project in the beginning of dredging is dependent on some of these factors first being presented to the public and reviewed by the EPA, right? So it's like they're not going to break ground, they're not going to start the dredging or break ground on the UDF until many of these undefined situations are defined and approved, reviewed and approved by the EPA.
Yes. So
it's just we're not there, so that means it may not be close to the starting of the dredging if these things are dependent on what the timeline is for the EPA to.
So have some patience. But our job, I laugh. We have the easy job. We read and we throw comments in. That's our job is easy. Actually, the people who have the hard job is people who are trying to think of all these different factors and do the design. So, we can throw dirt at, but I would say please have a little, when these plans finally do go final, that I believe they'll be quite good. Because these are some excellent engineering firms. And, but No, but
And some of these questions we already have answered. The only ones that we don't really like the answer, we have to do additional money. But it seems to me a lot of holes
yeah.
than the ought to be at this time. Some would have had if you were designing, if you were building a ship to compete, and it took this long, and we had so many questions that we hadn't even got for what we were doing for this. You it just didn't work with this as well. So I'm just surprised that we're not inventing it from scratch and doing something else.
And again, I would just say, give the engineers a little patience. They are really working hard on this. Last question.
This is the last question. Us having a 40-year history of monitoring these landfills, have they looked at how the process has changed? Have they corrected things? Have they said, oh, we shouldn't do it this way, we should do it this way? And isn't there some sort of template that's already in force that says, the EPA says you need to do this, this, and this, rather than X, Y, and Z? I would agree with her. It seems like with 40 years of history of monitoring these things, you would think, I know you're going to say, well, this is what you created in those 40 years, but I mean, the other questions like how you monitor the air and all this other stuff, you'd think that with 40 years of history, you would have a template that you can use to just say, this is how you do it, and this is how you do it properly.
I'm going to pass this to Brian, but I would just say the technology is constantly evolving and changing. This, I don't know, I mean, if you've ever tried to work with clay, but it's a disaster. And that was the original technology. And they came up with this, and if you threw this in the water, how big does this puff up? Because you use bentonite, you put bentonite chips in the water, and all of a sudden you've got water flowing out of your 5-gallon bucket, because it just swells. These technologies are better, so getting the best technologies, getting the best way of doing it, it's always evolving. Again, our job is easy, we're just making comments, but the actual design, I can't believe I'm doing this when I'm defending the competitor, but have a little patience with the engineers.
I mean, the other thing too, it is, in certain sense, this project is very site-specific, right? I mean, every project is, right? Every location or facility has its own unique considerations with hydrogeology that Malcolm mentioned, geotechnology, the bearing capacity of the material, the need of the support, so on and so forth, and just the space available for doing what they need to do, how to get the material there, in what form, there's different options, different alternatives. So, the project is very unique in its own way, so it does need a unique design. It's not really, some things are cookie cutter, you can take off the shelf, and that's what we're going to do here. In many ways, the liner system, the capping system are off the shelf. That's what they do with all of these modern facilities. That graphic I showed you there is what they're doing in all the other states that are doing this. So that much is pretty by the book. I think it's the other questions around hydraulic dredging versus rail versus trucking. Where does it make sense to do that? Where is the material most suitable to do that? Where is the infrastructure already in place to put a pipe in or use a rail car? So I think T&D is the big question mark we all still have. But to your point on the monitoring, in terms of long-term monitoring, typically those reports can come last in the process because that happens, at sort of a later point in the process. Either after the landfill is closed, we need to have a plan established for post-loading monitoring. That comes a little bit later. But during the filling, during construction, to your original point, that's certainly something that they should be thinking about, should they do some work that they should. So that's a great compliment, that's nothing to say, that's a good thing from you guys on. So like Mark said, I mean, it's because it's such a unique site with all unique considerations, our comments are focused on, site-specific things, and they have to sort of take them and then reevaluate their assessments hydrogeologically. One good example of where to kind of reconsider everything and provide, responses and considerations of those that are satisfactory. Hopefully that process will continue and we'll be able to get good comments throughout this whole process and, see good responses that are going to, give us a stronger project or a stronger design.
In any design project, you have multiple stages of review. You get to a 30% design and you review it. You get to 80% design. And new things will come up and as you're going through the whole process. And there's a reason why it's iterative. And it's nothing just comes off the shelf and works. Well, maybe once or twice in your career, but not often. So that's why it's iterative and just have a little bit. We're getting there, but you don't want to rush this. You want to have a chance to comment, you want a chance for back and forth, you want to have a chance to think about, well, if we did this, we just created 3 other problems. So it takes some time. So, but they are taking the time and they are getting the comments and getting the review. So allow for some mistakes to happen. We'll look at some things and say, that's lousy, but maybe we have a personal experience with that situation that another engineer didn't, but it's caught. But any design process is, you go so far and then you review it and try to think of all the problems that you've created and then fix them in the next level and then you review it again. Nothing goes from 0 to 100% without iterative reviews.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
That's all.